Here's another question about meditation. This is from Malta, Julian Zarb. How can mantra meditation strengthen the confluence by distinguishing the thoughts, distractions, and interferences of daily life? Many times after 30 years, I still feel the struggle of interferences and distractions during meditation, even when I try to keep them away.
Yes, the distractions of the world can be really quite pressing. I'm sure everyone would recognize that. The more pressing they are, however, the more obvious it is that it's good to, at sometimes at least, experience a detachment from them. Otherwise, I mean, it's terrible if there's no relief from that. Take anxiety as an example. It can be a curse. It can sort of gnaw into the being and never leave you alone. Sometimes it may be more pronounced than at other times, but it's like a constant companion, a companion you don't want, but nevertheless is there. So, little by little, in meditation, the mantra is sufficiently powerful and potent to make it possible to transcend that, to leave that to one side. And in its place, to experience the peace of the self. The more often we experience the peace of the self, the more that draws us, the more powerful that becomes. So, in ordinary life, sometimes people might like particular food or drink or something, but then they're introduced to better food or drink. And they think, this is better, I've got to leave that and you go to this. And again, you can be introduced to something finer and finer. And the fineness has its own drawing power, its own strength. Meditation gives us that experience, it draws us. So don't worry if there are distractions. That's a given. It doesn't matter. The Maharishi gave the example of walking down a busy street with lots and lots of pedestrians. You can't clear all the pedestrians away. You can't somehow dispel them. They're there. However, it's not difficult to avoid bumping into them. You just find your way through them. So with the distractions and anxieties or whatever else there may be, they're like pedestrians on a busy street. They're there, but we don't have to bump into them. If we do bump into them, we say, I'm terribly sorry, and move on. Yes?
I'm just going to go back to Julian's question, because I read something else into this. How can mantra meditation strengthen the confluence? And I think for many people, meditation is an enormous stream in their life. Would you like to say something about that?
It's the power of the mantra, which contains the element to burn up any impurities, to strengthen and nourish that which is good, and to bring us to peace. And it's the power of all the great sages who for millennia have meditated in this way. When we sit down to meditate, it's easy to think this is an individual practice. This is me just sitting down to meditate. At one level, that's right. However, at another level, it's not right. Because one sits down to meditate and one is joining this great tradition of sages in the past and in the present who meditate. And who meditate beautifully, perfectly. So the tradition of meditation is one force, one factor. The nature of the mantra is another. And just the simple discipline, you have to get up in the morning, which means you have to go to bed the night before. It's better, it's easier if you go to bed sober rather than drunk. The meditation the next morning is going to be easier. Gradually, these simple lessons are learned. Sometimes it takes a long time, but it can be decades, but it doesn't have to be. So just the discipline of meditating and sitting upright for half an hour can be tremendously strengthening. So there's the mantra, the tradition, and the discipline of meditation, all of which help, all of which work together. You never know what's going to happen. One day, when I used to practice as a barrister, I was in court, and the judge had a reputation for being ill-tempered and a bully. So I was a little bit nervous, and my opponent, the other barrister, was droning on. But I could see that it was coming to the point where I was going to have to speak. And I wanted to have a glass of water. So I called the usher, I signalled to the usher, could I have some water? Normally you get it, but on this occasion not. Anyway, so he brought a drink. And as I stood up to address this rather ill-tempered, bullying judge, I took a sip of what I thought was water, but which in fact was a gin and tonic. Which surprised me. So there are lots of gin and tonic moments in life. Meditation helps us to deal with them. Lots of times you're taken by surprise. Something happens you wouldn't expect. That's the nature of things. Anyway, I'm sure the judge was in on it because I can't say it would have happened otherwise. Anyway, you never know what's going to happen. With meditation and knowledge of the self, you can meet anything. If you don't have that, you try and configure events so they're going to be configured in a way that you want them to be configured, and you know how you're going to react to them when they're configured. But that's a strain. It's a strain to configure them in the first place, and then they go out of place and things happen which shouldn't happen. And then you're trying to work out how to deal with this situation which no longer exists because something else has happened. And that's difficult. That's not meditating. Meditating, it doesn't matter. You meet whatever's there. However unexpected. It may be pleasant, it may be unpleasant. It may be auspicious, it may be inauspicious. But if you're yourself, if you're in yourself, if I can put it that way, it's possible to meet anything. And really that's living. The rest is a kind of shadow world. The real life is what's happening, for better or for worse, because it really doesn't matter. You try and meet every situation wisely, responsibly, lovingly, intelligently, but ultimately the universe will weigh the work, the universe will work.